There is a truth so old, it has been buried beneath centuries of myth, morality, and manipulation. A truth so potent, it has shaped wars, birthed religions, and seduced empires into ruin. It is not taught in schools. It is whispered in poetry, hinted at in sacred texts, and feared by those who crave control. It is the dark truth about women. Not dark in the sense of evil, but dark in the sense of mystery. Unfathomable, ancient, magnetic, dangerous, divine. There exists a forbidden book, long out of print, often discarded as heresy or pseudoscience. A book called Women, Magic and Lure by Calvin Reed. In it, Reed does not describe women as people alone, but as forces, as symbols, as archetypes so powerful that civilizations have bent around them like iron filings to a magnet. He writes not of modern psychology or feminism, but of something older, a primal understanding that femininity is not merely a gender, but a spell, a lure, a mirror that reflects the hidden longings of man's soul, and that spell, when unexamined, can possess, but when understood, it can liberate. This is not a sermon. This is not an attack. This is a descent into a mystery as old as language, and if you're brave enough to look into it, you won't just learn about women, you'll learn about yourself. Chapter 1. Woman as Symbol. The Mirror, the Gate, the Maze. Calvin Reed opens his forbidden text with a premise that immediately disrupts modern thought. He claims that woman is not to be understood as a being, but as a symbol, one that has haunted the male imagination since the dawn of myth. To Reed, woman is the mirror of man's unconscious. She is what he fears, desires, represses, and idealizes. She does not exist merely in the flesh, but in the mind, etched into dreams, stories, statues, and songs. She is not one thing, but a trinity, the mirror. She reflects what man cannot see in himself, his hunger for beauty, his shame, his longing for the divine. The gate. She opens the path toward transformation. She draws him out of his logic, out of his isolation, into the unknown. The maze. She confounds him. She is chaos in silk. She speaks in riddles, not because she is manipulative, but because she is intuitive. She lives by feeling, not formula. To reduce woman to a role, a mother, a lover, a wife, is to miss her completely. She is the unknowable in human form, and that is why, throughout history, she has been both worshipped and feared. Men build cathedrals in her name, and they burn her at the stake when she cannot be controlled. Reed writes, "Man invents systems to avoid chaos. Woman reminds him that chaos births all life." This is the dark truth, not that women are evil, but that they are beyond comprehension. And in a world obsessed with order, that makes them dangerous. Chapter 2. The Spell of Femininity, Seduction, Archetype, and Control. What makes femininity so hypnotic is not just physical beauty, it is the force that beauty represents. Femininity, according to Calvin Reed, is not a performance, but a frequency. It exists beneath the surface like a gravitational field pulling the psyche inward. It does not scream for attention, it draws it. It does not chase, it waits. And it waits like the moon waits for the tide, knowing eventually all waters will rise. The spell of femininity is woven not just in the body, but in the voice, the silence, the softness that conceals an unfathomable depth. Reed points to ancient myths, Aphrodite rising from the sea foam, Kali dancing in blood, Lilith exiled from Eden, not to romanticize, but to warn. These stories encode the same message. Woman is not safe. Woman is not simple. Woman is power, wrapped in velvet. And here is where it gets dangerous, not because woman seeks control, but because man seeks to possess what cannot be possessed. He confuses the archetype with the individual. He projects divinity onto a person, then hates her when she does not live up to the goddess he invented. Reed writes, "Every man falls in love with an illusion, what he thinks she is, and he is broken, not by betrayal, but by reality." Femininity is a mirror of the inner feminine that lives inside every man, what Jung called the anima. To encounter a powerful woman is, often, to be confronted by your own unlived soul, and if you've never met her within, she will possess you from without. This is the spell. Not an enchantment she casts deliberately, but one the masculine casts upon itself, projecting inner longing onto outer form, hoping it will redeem him. And when it doesn't, the spell turns bitter. Love becomes resentment. Worship becomes control. Desire becomes violence. But it was never about her. It was about the symbol he mistook for a savior. Chapter 3. Woman as Lure. Evolutionary Instinct or Mythic Destiny. Calvin Reid titled his book, Women, Magic and Lure for a Reason. He viewed woman not just as a mirror, but as a lure, something that calls the masculine forward, not always for his pleasure, but for his evolution. The question arises, is this lure merely biological, an evolutionary trick to ensure reproduction, or is it something more, something older than science, deeper than instinct? Modern psychology leans heavily on evolutionary biology, pheromones, symmetry, fertility signals. But Reid wasn't interested in mating strategies. He was interested in mythic gravity, in the idea that woman draws man not just toward sex, but toward transformation. In mythology, the woman is often the one who appears at the threshold of the hero's journey. She is the one who challenges his purpose, tests his conviction, or offers him a vision he cannot unsee. She is the Sphinx, the siren, the muse, the virgin, the witch. Each form is a lure, and each one demands that he evolve in order to reach her. Reid believed this is not a manipulation, it is an invitation. The lure is not designed to trap, it is designed to pull the soul forward. What appears as seduction is often a summons, to grow, to see more, to become worthy. That is why the feminine, in its deepest form, is not content with flattery or games. She wants presence, depth, truth, not the performance of masculinity, but the integration of it. And herein lies the paradox. The more a man becomes himself, the more he is capable of receiving woman without needing to possess her. The more he becomes aware of his own anima, his inner feminine, the less he is lured into chasing phantoms outside himself. Reid wrote, "The feminine calls not to his loins, but to his soul. If he only hears the former, he is deaf to the gift." This is the dark truth. The lure is real, but it is not what it seems. It is not a trap. It is a test, one you can only pass by waking up. Chapter 4. The Fear of the Feminine, Why Men Worship and Wound. Why is it that throughout history, men have either placed women on pedestals or burned them at the stake? Why has the feminine been both exalted and punished, desired and destroyed? Calvin Reid believed it is because woman embodies a power that does not obey, and the masculine, especially in its immature state, craves control, to control the world, to control the body, to control love, to control the unknown. But the feminine is not control. She is mystery, she is flux, she is nature itself, bleeding, changing, birthing, dissolving. In mythology, the goddess is rarely tame. She seduces and then vanishes. She blesses and then breaks. She offers love, but never submission. And that is what terrifies men who have not yet met their own shadows. Reid writes, "Woman is not feared for her weakness, but for her power to expose what man hides from himself." To love a woman deeply is to come face to face with your inadequacy, your fear of not being enough, your hidden rage at being vulnerable, your longing to merge, and your panic at the loss of self. It is easier then to split her in two, to call her a saint or a whore, to worship her when she is passive and wound her when she is wild. This binary, the virgin and the temptress, the mother and the witch, is not about her. It is about the masculine's inability to hold complexity. The immature man wants clarity. The mature man embraces contradiction. He can see that the same woman who inspires tenderness can also ignite chaos, that the same softness that heals him can also undo him, and he does not fear her for this. He reveres her. because only a soul that knows how to kneel can truly stand in its own power. The feminine is not meant to be explained. She is meant to be witnessed, and when she is, without projection or punishment, she reveals the divine. Chapter 5. Femininity as Initiation, What She Unlocks in You. What if women are not here to complete you, but to initiate you? This is perhaps the deepest and most radical idea in Calvin Reed's forbidden text, that femininity, when encountered consciously, is not a distraction, but a threshold, a sacred passage, one that challenges everything you thought you knew about yourself. The ancient world understood this. The rites of Dionysus, the temples of Inanna, the tantric teachings of India, all placed woman at the center of transformation, not as passive objects, but as living portals to another realm of being, not for pleasure alone, but for awakening. And yet, in the modern world, we've stripped femininity of its ritual force. We've replaced the mystery with marketing, the archetype with image, the sacred with convenience. But when a man meets a woman who carries the full force of her essence, her emotional range, her intuition, her erotic energy, her chaos, her truth, it shakes him. Not because she's doing anything to him, but because something ancient inside him is being called up. The part that was taught to numb. The part that forgot how to feel. The part that has never been seen. Reed described this moment as an initiation by fire, the kind of encounter that burns away illusion, ego, and false identity, the kind of love, or rejection, that forces you to look in the mirror and say, "Who am I, really?" "She is not yours," he wrote. "She is the flame that will show you who you are." And this is why most men run, not because she's too much, but because she's the key to a part of themselves they've never unlocked. But for the few who stay, who breathe through the fire, who allow her presence not to complete them, but to reveal them, they emerge not as boys, but as men, not as conquerors, but as creators, not as consumers of love, but as carriers of it, because once you've been seen by the feminine, truly seen, you can no longer pretend to be less than who you are. You've been initiated, not by her power, but by your own power, finally rising to meet her. Chapter 6. Beyond Gender, the Inner Feminine and the Integration of the Soul. This isn't just about women, and it's not just about men. Calvin Reed may have framed his book around the outer experience of woman as magic and lure, but the deeper truth, like all esoteric teachings, is symbolic. The feminine is not confined to a body. It is a force inside every human being, and until that inner feminine is integrated, no external relationship can truly thrive. Jung called this the anima, the soul image of woman inside the male psyche. In women, there is the animus, the inner masculine. These inner figures are not just concepts. They are the bridges between the conscious and unconscious mind, between logic and intuition, between structure and mystery. When a man has not made peace with his own inner feminine, he is either terrified by women or obsessed with them. He projects onto them everything he refuses to hold within himself: sensitivity, emotion, vulnerability, receptivity. And when those qualities come from someone else, he can't handle it, so he either clings or he controls, worships or wounds. But when he turns inward, when he begins to dialogue with his own intuition, his dreams, his longing, his softness, something profound happens. He becomes whole. He no longer seeks a woman to complete him because he's already in touch with the feminine within. He no longer chases or fears what he doesn't understand. He listens to it. And in doing so, he opens himself to a love that is not rooted in possession, but in presence. Reed hinted at this without fully spelling it out, but the implications are clear. The lure of woman is not just evolutionary, it's spiritual. She lures man not into her arms, but into himself, to the part he has neglected, to the soul he has forgotten. She is not the answer, she is the doorway. And that doorway lives inside you, regardless of gender. Until you honor the sacred feminine within, you will never truly honor her in the world. Chapter 7. the real power of women and why it's been suppressed. Now we arrive at the question most are afraid to ask. If the feminine is so powerful, why has it been suppressed for so long? The answer is not simple, but Calvin Reid dared to touch it, because the feminine cannot be controlled, and anything that cannot be controlled is feared. This fear is ancient. You see it in the myth of Pandora, whose curiosity cursed mankind; in Eve, whose hunger for knowledge exiled humanity; in Lilith, whose refusal to submit made her a demon. These aren't just stories, they are psychic blueprints, warnings carved into cultural memory about what happens when a woman steps beyond her role. But what role? A role assigned by whom? Reid argued that patriarchal structures didn't just fear women's sexuality, they feared her ability to awaken, the power to inspire devotion, stir madness, speak truth without filter, hold pain without breaking, and move through life not in straight lines, but in spirals. The feminine doesn't build empires, she dissolves them. She doesn't worship systems, she exposes their cracks. This is the real danger, not that women are seductive, but that they are disruptive to any hierarchy not built on truth. And so, for thousands of years, systems of control sought to domesticate her, through doctrine, through shame, through myth, through law, but no matter how many spells were cast to contain her, her essence endured. Because the feminine is not a trend, it's not a gender, it's not a role, it is life itself, and life refuses to be tamed. The mystery, the gift, the truth. So what is the dark truth about women? It is not that they are unknowable, manipulative, or mystical beings from another world. It is that they are mirrors of the deepest parts of ourselves, the parts we forget, repress, or avoid. And in encountering them, truly, consciously, soulfully, we are invited to encounter ourselves. Reid did not write his book to expose women. He wrote it to awaken men, to pull back the veil of projection and see the feminine not as a problem to solve, but as a mystery to respect, a presence to engage, a force to co-create with. The woman you meet in life, whether she enters as lover, mother, friend, stranger, is not just flesh and blood. She is also symbol. She is also myth. She is also the echo of every woman who came before her. And if you listen closely, if you allow her to speak without needing to define her, you might just hear the sound of your own soul whispering back. That's the truth no one tells you. Not because it's dangerous, but because it's freeing. Nothing is more threatening to control than a soul that's finally free.